All right, there's one more speaker left for this afternoon's session. And our next speaker is very active in the exploration, documentation, and preservation of ancient stonework and earthwork structures in the Northeast, particularly those that are not presently adequately understood or documented. Although he has undertaken such projects in Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, PEI, Newfoundland, and Labrador, his main activities are focused in his home province of Nova Scotia. So if you haven't guessed yet, it's me, Terry Deveau. And I think my talk is just about ready to go. Right. So, hidden traces of early Europeans in the remains of a drowned forest. Now, first of all, a little bit of a geography lesson. What are we talking about here? So, this is Nova Scotia, and then this is New England. And the part of Nova Scotia that I'm looking at is called Cape Sable Island. Now, you may have heard of a different Sable Island out here in the North Atlantic, the graveyard of the Atlantic. But that is not the one we are going to be talking about. So this is Sable Island with the ponies, but no. This is a different Cape Sable Island. And so just want to make that very clear, because it's easy to get confused. All right. Let's zoom in on Cape Sable Island. It's a beautiful spot. It is connected to the mainland now via a causeway. I think it was in the 30s that it was put through. So you can drive right on it. And we're going to be looking at the southern part of Cape Sable Island, a place called the Hawk, and it's basically a beautiful beach. And as you can probably tell, this is the southernmost point in Nova Scotia, mainland. There are some islands that are a little bit further south. Okay, continuing to zoom in. This is the Hawk Beach. So the area shaded in purple here is an area that I explored myself on July 16th of this year. And I really analyzed it very carefully. I walked over it, looked at not every little rock, but anything unusual. There's a lot of rocks and stuff. And I'll show you some of my photos. So it's about 1 kilometer long to give you the scale. And I walked back and forth across it. Now, the day I was there, I chose that day. I chose that day, July 16th, because it was an event of extreme low tide. So the features that I want to discuss today are only visible at low tide. And the lower the tide, the more they're visible. So I wanted to wait until we had a date on the calendar when the tide was just about the lowest of the whole year. And so it was on July 16th. Like, if there was a lower tide anywhere in the year, it might have been lower by like 1/10 of an inch or something. So it was really about as low as it was going to get. Okay, now what I've got here is some imagery from Google Earth. And as you probably know, Google Earth allows you to see satellite imagery of just about any place in the world. But many people don't know is that there's a way to go back in time as well. So you don't just have to look at the image that comes right up initially. You can use another version of Google Earth that lets you go back and choose other times. Now, you can't choose any arbitrary time, but there is a database of available dates when imagery was taken. So I went through that database, and I found a couple of shots that seem to show the ocean floor more accurately. And I thought I had put the date on it. It's in tiny letters up there, which is 2011. So, so these are two satellite imagery plots about a couple of years apart, but they were also showing, the ocean floor. The more recent one just shows waves. You can't see anything, but these ones that came out pretty good, they're fairly good resolution. So this is the beach, of course, and this is a very interesting boulder berm, cobble berm. I'm pretty sure it's natural, but it looks just like a stone road or something. But it's the sort of thing that does form through natural coastal processes. And then these other sort of light green ones are exposed rocky deposits. And in between them, you have what are mostly sandy deposits. But it's hard to tell. There's also these really black ones, and those are the ones that contain the drowned forest. So we're going to be looking at the drowned forest quite a bit. Okay, so when I arrived there on the early morning of July 16th, I couldn't just go any time of the day. I had to go when the low tide was actually occurring. And as it happened, it occurred right at sunrise, which on July 16th is pretty early in the morning. And this is a 3-hour drive from where I live. So I had to get up at 2 or something like that and drive down. I think it was around 5 a.m. when I got here. So it's a popular beach, but there were a couple of people out, believe it or not. I think they had the same idea as me, unless they were looking for lobsters lodged in the rock or something. So this is what the drowned forest looks like. And these stumps are exposed, and they're actual wood. These ones are covered with seaweed, so they have seaweed that is attached to them. Now we'll show you some other shots without the seaweed, and these ones are fairly densely clustered. So each one of those stumps was a tree in a forest at one time. But in other places, okay, here's one with not so much seaweed, but it's the same area. This was one of the first shots I saw right at sunrise. And here, the trees are more sparsely separated. They're not too clear in this shot, but there are a few of them poking up. And so what's happening is that the coastal erosion, the sea level, the rising sea level is what killed the forest 1,500 years ago. But it then subsequently got buried by moving sands. And now what's happening is the rising sea level is washing away those sands, and it's gradually exposing them. So these ones that are fairly high up on the beach have only been recently exposed, whereas the ones that are further down, closer to the water's edge right now, they have all the seaweed on them and so on because they've been exposed for a longer period of time and the seaweed has attached itself and so on. But with the continued coastal erosion, those ones are being destroyed by storms and waves and that. So it's a very dynamic environment. You have new stumps being exposed high up on the beach where the dunes are receding, and then the older stumps near the water's edge here at low tide are gradually being lost to the coastal erosion processes. Okay, yeah, this is a better close-up of the ones high up on the beach. Okay, so this is a close-up of one of these stumps, and I chose one that doesn't have as much seaweed, so it still has some seaweed, but not as much, so you can see more clearly what it looks like. This is not a particularly big one, but they come in all sizes. They're, some of them are maybe as small as my thumb, to my size of my wrist, to the size of my leg, to bigger than me. So they're in all different sizes. But my stick here is marked off in 10-centimeter units. So a foot would be like 3 of those units. All right, so just some facts about the drowned forest. Now, they're not fossils. They're actual wood. And in many places, they're rooted in the original soil. So the soil that they grew in originally is still there, too. So the folks that study these things have dated this particular drowned forest to about 1,500 years ago, which is roughly 500 AD. And it's the salt water, really, that kills the trees. But it doesn't happen that quickly. Not all the trees died at exactly the same time. It's quite a wide range of years, but it's hard to date it accurately as well. So, 1,500 is the number that's thrown around as probably about as close as we can get to when this forest died. Yeah, sometimes they call it a subfossil because, it's a living thing from an ancient time, but it hasn't turned to stone. Like, to be a fossil, it has to turn to stone. So it's not a petrified forest. Right, so this is a close-up of the soil, which is like a peat mass or mat. And this is the same stick, so that's 10 centimeters, so 3 of those segments would be a foot. So you can see right here it's pretty thick. Here's another look at it, and you can see that it lies on top of a bed of beach stones and sand. So, there was a point in time when this soil formed. I mean, with the glaciers 10,000 years ago, initially the land was scoured, there was no soil. Gradually over time, soil built up. So, whether this soil is 8,000 years ago when it first started to form, as good a guess as any, I guess. But the interesting thing here, though, is how clear it is. This particular section, now it's not all like this, but there is one section, which is the one I photographed, which is remarkably clear because I just showed you a couple of other photos of the drowned forest where the trees were really thick, the stumps. And there's more of that over here. And if I was to turn the camera the other way, there'd be more of that as well. But there's mainly this one section, there may be more than one, but not very many, a few sections here. And not only are there no stumps, there's not that many rocks either. And mostly along this shore, where there's no stumps, there are a lot of rocks. So it's curious, it raised my interest right away because I immediately think maybe humans cleared the trees out of this section to make a garden. It's just a hypothesis. So anyway, because that would imply there'd be humans there, 500 AD to do it. Not impossible. But what really has been attracting interest to this area is the structure that they're calling it, for lack of a better term, that is being exposed by the coastal erosion. And this is one shot of it. Basically, it's a row of posts, and they're not natural. They're in a straight line. This particular photo, it's not my photo, and this was fairly early in the time that people became aware of this newly exposed structure. Now, this is a more recent photo, and you can see that's supposedly the same structure. It's from a slightly different angle, but already a lot of the posts have disappeared. Now, when I was there were even fewer of them left. So this, again, is, as far as I can piece together, it's exactly the same structure we were looking at, but now you've only got a handful of posts left in this one section. Now, I'm not showing the whole length of it. If I was to turn the camera around and look the other direction, there would be a few more. But still, you can, okay, there's another one there, about to, and maybe another one there. But they're disappearing. Here's a close-up just to show the axe mark. It's a bit of sand on this one, but it's a very clean limb cut with an axe. No question about it. And again, this is not my photo, but someone else supplied this shot of one of the posts that eventually got washed out of the sand and just lying flat on the ground. You can see that the end of it was definitely shaped with an axe. And so some of the ones that are remaining intact and sticking up straight out of the sand, they do have holes in them, clearly made with an auger. This one looked like it had 2 holes. And I'm not sure if I got any shots, but there are examples that where you have a pole like this and a pole like that, very similar next to it, and then a wooden dowel joining the two. So it's not just poles either. There's this very curious stone structure that is connected to the poles. Now, you can see a couple of poles there. Might have a better shot of it later, but in any case, that wall, that line of poles that I was just showing you in the other shot, basically lines up in this direction. It's sort of at the open end of this U structure. Oh, here's another example. This is the same structure. Those 2 poles I was just mentioning now are seen here. I've put my meter stick at the other end. So you can see this is longer than you might have guessed just by looking at this shot. It doesn't look like it goes that far back, but actually it does go quite far back, because on the next shot, the meter stick now looks kind of short because it's so far away. But you can see the stones clearly looked placed, and they seem to be like in a ditch, because you can see how the peat has been cut away. So I don't know how deep this stone row would go, and I don't know how tall it was, because this is all simply what's left. It may have been a wall, or it may be some kind of a drain. Hard to know. But the 2 arms are fairly similar, and they've got fairly large stones in them, but a mixture. Okay, here's another angle of it, this time from higher up on the beach, looking towards the open water. And so you can see the 2 arms, and those are the 2 sticks at the end that I was mentioning before. And now you can see a few more of the posts that are in that line. So again, that line is what's left of that very first slide I showed you with posts, and where the posts were all like almost right up against each other. It's the erosion that is gradually the posts are disappearing from the sand. Okay, so this is a shot of the U-shaped structure taken by somebody else about 4 years ago. And it looks a little different, but it had only fairly recently become exposed. So the back end of it, for example, seems to not yet have come out of the sand. There's not as many stones visible as in the shot I took, mainly because there's more sand still covering it. If you go back a few more years, you wouldn't have seen it at all. All of those stones would have been covered by sand. Okay, now, there are actually 2 rows of posts. The row of posts that I've been telling you about is on the water side of that U-shaped structure, but higher up on the beach above the U-shaped structure, there's another row of posts. And it seems that these have only more recently become exposed. In other words, the receding dune has now revealed a second row of posts that people didn't even know about until recently because they were still under the sand. And they line up nicely with this lighthouse. I think that's just a coincidence, but so this photo was, again, 4 years ago, and you can see the posts are in pairs, and then there's a third one in some cases as well. I think that's the third one there too. Now this is my photo over here from July 16th. Still lines up with the lighthouse, but the posts are, you know, kind of the worse for wear. And if I went back next summer, it'd probably look even worse. It's very actively, it's actively being exposed and actively being destroyed at the same time. Now this is the same shot from the other direction. I've simply turned right around 180 degrees, facing now away from the lighthouse, and you're seeing the same structure. This was actually taken quite a few hours after I was shooting the U-shaped structure there. So the U-shaped structure is now covered by water, the rising tide. So this is yet another shot of the drowned forest. And can anybody notice anything unusual here? I'm going to tell you why I'm showing you this slide, but I'm just wondering if your eyes are led to anything that I haven't discussed yet. Right. 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 Good call, Harvey. Harvey saw it right away. There's some red bricks there. And that's the other thing that this site has been noted for, red ceramic brick and tile. Now, brick is not that big of a deal. You know, people on the East Coast here, you know, have been making brick ever since they first arrived. But tile is a bit more unusual, and many archaeologists have been on the hunt for red roofing tiles for decades, because it's considered diagnostic of certain European cultures that would be coming over here at an early date, including mainly the Portuguese, although perhaps a Basque and a Spanish and French as well. But archaeologists have been looking for red roofing tiles in Nova Scotia because they hope it might lead them to a potential settlement site. Now, it's true that those roofing tiles could have been just used as ballast and not literal roofing tiles, but either way, they came from Europe. Now, this one, though, is just a brick, and I did spot a few of these bricks. And in some cases, as is this one, they appeared entangled in the roots of the drowned trees. So does that mean that the tree grew over them? That would be something. I don't know. Probably not. The tide just probably somehow jimmied them in there, I guess. But nevertheless, it's intriguing. Okay, so this is a similar case. I personally only found one red roofing tile, and this is it down here. So I put the meter stick down as soon as I spotted the tile, and took this photo. But then I also pulled it out and took a shot of it with the meter stick in the background. I'm told by archaeologists that I've discussed this site with that finding these roofing tiles now is pretty rare, and that's the only one I found, and I spent a lot of time looking really hard. I didn't remove any of the bricks, but I did take this one sample roofing tile home with me. But they claim that they have found dozens and dozens and dozens of these roofing tile fragments over the years, and also collected them, so they're not there now. So how do we explain this site? there are a lot of questions, a lot of mysteries associated with it. One archaeologist did do a study in 2018, and he took some wood samples from those structures, and his intent was to do both carbon-14 and dendrochronology on the wood. He took 3 samples. One of them was from just driftwood up on the bank, although it looked like it had probably been in the structure originally. One was a piece of the actual structure, and one was a stick lying in the sand close to the structure. All 3 came back with the same carbon-14, but it was a very wide spread of dates, something like anything between 1590 and 1750. It was, so it was a really broad range. It was something like the early 1600s kind of being in the middle of that range. A similar issue to what we were hearing about earlier today about the Newport Tower, right? If Jim Egan's talk, like with the date range is so wide, you just wonder if you can even trust it at all. And the dendrochronology has not yet come back. I'm not sure why not. It's been almost 4 years, but I don't know if we're ever going to hear any dendrochronology results there. I mean, one of the challenges is, if you know about dendrochronology, you look at the tree rings and then match them with your database of known trees that have been dated by other means, like either they were found in a building and when the building was built, or maybe they've had carbon-14 or something like that. But if that particular pattern is not in your database, maybe because it's too old and you don't have any reference examples to put in the database, then you're stuck. You can't use dendro. And I'm wondering if that's maybe what's happening here. So I'm afraid I have to leave you with all these questions and no conclusions, because it really is very much in a state of flux, both in terms of the analysis and the site itself. So people are worried that this site will vanish. There's nothing really that can be done about it. There are archaeologists in the province that are attempting to make some effort to investigate it before it completely disappears, but so far that's it. So, any questions? Yes, sir. Man, pardon me.
Does anyone know what kind of trees they were?
I don't think it's been conclusively determined, but they do look similar to the local spruce trees that are quite common in the area, but I can't give you a definitive. They don't look unusual, though. No one else?
Can Jim Feathers test the piece? Can Jim Feathers test the dating on the ceramic?
Can he?
Yeah, they can test when pottery and clay was fired.
Okay, well, I didn't know that. Maybe that's a good tip for something to do next. Thank you.
Have those tiles been found in other places nearby?
No, just that one area. They've been found in all of the areas that are associated with the drowned forest, but that's only that 1 kilometer stretch that I was telling you about. But apart from there's no other red tiles been found. No, none at all. Yes, sir.
It might be hard to do dendrochronology on really small diameter trees, because it's not giving you a broad enough range to refer to a historical range.
Exactly. And there are some big samples, though. I'm not sure, like, the work that was done in 2018, I'm not sure how big of pieces he was...
It's either the cross-section of the tree, there's not enough rings to...
Yeah, I know what you mean, but all I'm saying... Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. And I don't know if the archaeologists chose, like, small pieces or big pieces, but there are some big pieces. So there are some big pieces. There are some pieces that big, yeah. Yeah, not the upright posts, but there are some horizontal members that I didn't bother getting into, but yeah, so there are some to choose, but I don't know that he did choose one of those. But no, it's a valid point. Anyone else? Yes?
Are there any red clay sources nearby?
Not really. Clay is found in the northern half of Nova Scotia. So there's some great clay sources up there along the Shubenacadie River and so on. But in the southern part of Nova Scotia, not so much. It's more of a granitic geology, which granite does decay into kaolin clay, but it hasn't accumulated in very many places. But no, I mean there was brick making in Nova Scotia, but not in this immediate area. Okay, we've got one way up there.
The footprint on the U-shaped structure, the rock structure, that footprint, is there other structures in that area that might indicate a fishing weir or something in the techniques that the natives were using that might have built?
Well, that's certainly been one of the big hypotheses, that not only the stones but the sticks as well were related to some kind of a fishing weir. That probably is the leading hypothesis. Another one is that it was also some kind of a stage for drying cod, because those are known historically to have had a fairly similar construction. So yeah, it could be either one of those two things, but right now those are just hypotheses, and we need to test them more conclusively. But it may end up being one of those two things, yeah.
So on the book called The Cod by Mark Kurlensky,
Yes,
are you familiar with that?
yes,
It's a full history of the whole cod fishery,
that's right.
which the Portuguese were first in. Apparently, there's more bricks and more tiles from the Portuguese across St. Lawrence on the shore of Labrador.
Oh yeah, no, definitely up there for sure. Yeah, no, yeah,
I think there were more there, and then apparently they got into a fight with the local Indians, and they abandoned that area
right.
and moved further south into Nova Scotia. But initially, they were all where there was the most fish, which is the mouth of the river.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. On the coast of Labrador, there's like Red Bay, for example, has got a great. If you're ever up in that area, visit Red Bay. They've got a great Parks Canada museum right there, and also the actual reconstructed, fishing site.
I just want to say that because it's not that in Canada uncommon.
True. Yeah, definitely the southern coast of Labrador along the Gulf of St. Lawrence there is historically where a lot of the remains of those red tiles have been found. You're right. Okay, I think we're done. So thank you very much.